Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Hui Hong from BlueChilli Group. Just a quick introduction. We are a venture studio that started in Australia, spanning a few industries, and here in Singapore, we are dedicated solely to advancing health tech in Asia. So we work with corporations, startups, investors, the stakeholders that we see today, and others to commercialize and grow health innovation for the region. That's just my introduction. I'll be moderating today's session, where we'll discuss the rising potential of digital health in the region. And here I will introduce to you our guest speakers, Anil, who's the head of Emerging Asia region at Pfizer Group, of course, one of the world's premier biopharma companies. And Dr. Liu Chang, the regional director of China, Singapore, and Hong Kong market at Access Health, a think tank advisory group, as well as implementation partner for the healthcare industry. And last but not least, we have with us also Carlos, an investor at MassMutual Ventures, Southeast Asia, a return-focused corporate venture firm of insurer MassMutual. So I think with that, just a little quick background on today's topic. As we all know, digital health globally has received a booster shot in demand this year, fueled by the impact of COVID-19 on our daily living and how health services are delivered. So I'll start off the discussion today with the first question for our dear panelists here. How do you think digital health can disrupt healthcare and unlock value in Asia? I think for this first question, I'll let Anil start off first.
Thanks, Hui Hong, and thanks for having me here. I'm happy to represent Pfizer, as you said, is a global biopharma company which is focused on innovation. And as you rightly pointed out, with COVID, healthcare innovation and healthcare delivery innovation seems to be coming to the forefront. So it's the right time for us to have a conversation like this. Now, I don't know if I'll call it a disruption, but I think the way I look at it is this probably will end up being the decade for healthcare transformation. Okay, and I'm confident that the transformation will come about from two folds. One will be much higher uptake of digital utilization in the way we manage healthcare services and delivery. Okay, and the other is we will have a lot more aggregation of healthcare conventional stakeholders and also some non-conventional stakeholders participating in the healthcare space. And this aggregation will transform the way the healthcare landscape is in the future. So I'm actually really looking forward to this transition. If I have to, sorry, go ahead.
How do you think that will actually unlock new value? You think with the
what we're really seeing right now, Hui Hong, is the tip of the surface, right? So because of the fact that physically we can't go to hospitals, physically we can't go to pharmacies, we're beginning to see healthcare services or telehealth and telemedicine services coming to the fore. But there's a lot which is happening in the background, even before COVID, okay, honestly speaking. But I think COVID has brought it to the fore. If you ask me, there are three things which are happening. One is digital uptake in healthcare sector itself has changed over the past decade, and I think it will change drastically in the future. Two, access to information for patients, like you and me, and your mom and your aunt and your uncle, everyone has and go to Dr. Google, okay, which is also transformed the way people access information. And access to information has also got transformed with mobile technology uptake, right? So I think there's several factors which have put patients into the fore of gaining knowledge. So that's changing something. And then we're also having an advent of technology coming into the space of the way healthcare is dealt with. Let it be wearables, let it be diagnostic, let it be AI-based tools which are helping in doing diagnosis. Okay, let it be technologies which are being used to accelerate R&D cycles, etc. So there's immense potential in the way digital uptake is also contributing to this.
All right, thanks so much, Anil. So basically, you see a transformation in everything from access to information to how delivery of care is conducted, and it's permeating across customer journey from diagnostics to treatment.
And that's from the patient front. And but healthcare also has, as I pointed out, that Pfizer is an innovation based company. So there's a fair amount of research and development which happens in the healthcare space. Let it be pharmaceutical companies doing research to bring out breakthrough medicines, or let it be diagnostic companies doing research to bring in breakthrough technologies to the place. Okay, and all that is also getting a huge booster in my mind in the way digital is being used in that space. So there's one is a patient journey, the other is in the back office. There's a fair amount of work which is getting done.
Thank you so much, Anil. I think that is actually what we hear a lot in the industry. The buzzwords cited often by pharma these days: customer journey, as well patient journey, as well as the back-end processes of care delivery and all this. So very good overview, Anil. And now I'd like to invite Liu Chang to give your perspective on this.
Sure, thanks. Hi everyone, it's great pleasure to have me here, or to be here today. So Access Health actually this year, since last year, we have been very sort of focused on study and documenting the way digital technology influencing not just health care delivery, but in the entire healthcare system transformation, especially seeing what's happened, for instance, in China and also in many other markets in this region. It's also, I think it's a very critical time right now, especially for instance in China, having so many platforms reaching really, really huge scale to how to evaluate their impact in healthcare system. Again, broader than just delivery, but also all other aspects of healthcare system. So last year we have been working on with both World Bank and WHO in China study through a more systematic study, but also documenting case studies in the digital health solutions relating to healthcare system transformation. But I think this really sort of expedited by this year's COVID-19. We just actually published a report with Rockefeller Foundation together, documented 12 case studies in digital technology tackling COVID in China. I'm actually traveling in China right now. Within a week, I've traveled to 4 cities. It's just amazing how the country has been really back to normal domestically, right? Largely benefited by technology. So I think through our 12 studies, we realized actually it's covered the whole breadth of healthcare system. The delivery is just a small part. Maybe 3 case studies that focus on how service has been delivered. But there's just so many other ways that digital technology can be applied. Like just Anil mentioned, is really the digital transformation for the entire healthcare system. I think another point I want to make, especially relevant to the ASEAN market, is more towards the low resource country. I think that where we see digital technology might have additional benefits, especially how that can be linked with the grassroots providers and people, and also linked with healthcare systems. So we have also been working with some amazing example, like Reach 52. They have been active in a few ASEAN countries, and also Possible Health in Nepal. That's one of the best public-private partnerships we see in how leveraging digital platform, but making that into a backbone of the future healthcare system in that country.
All right, thanks so much. So again, a lot of focus on the delivery, even to consumer touch points that are traditionally a little bit harder to access in the traditional system before digitalization technology coming in. And by what you say, you focus quite a lot on delivery, although you say you will go across the system. Do you think delivery will be where the impact will be the most felt?
I don't think so. I think that's actually the key message we want to tell right now is because all the digital health, this concept started with like telemedicine, right? I think in back of our mind is certainly related to delivery, but the potential of digital technology in health system is much more beyond that. In China, again, I think some of the players like WeDoctor, they're now become the backbone of the entire healthcare system. So delivery is just maybe 1/3 of what they do, but really integrating with financing, with all the backend, and also even measuring outcome and cost. So helping the system transform into a more value-based system. So I think there are a lot of great potential that digital technology can play. So that's why I think we call it digital health right now, rather than telemedicine.
Yeah, and I think that's also a very nice lead in. The last point you said, very important one, the partnerships with regards to roping in finance, like and all these other aspects like payment models for healthcare and of course also WellCare, another team that we'll see. So now I'll pass it on to Carlos. Traditionally, CVC of a payer. So how do you see digital health disrupting and unlocking value in Asia for your CVC?
Yeah, first things first, thank you for having me, and very excited to be here for this talk. Not much more to add actually to what Anil and Chang have said, but you got to ask me about two themes that I've seen as an investor that I find particularly exciting, particularly in the Asia lens. One will be the fact that we can now decentralize resources across Asia. So that's one benefit that telemedicine has definitely brought to the table, and we've seen that benefit with COVID. The second thing that we've seen is we think about digital health as being very complex digital solutions, but sometimes something as simple as a workflow optimization tool can bring a lot of value to the care providers. And that's something that we've seen amplified in COVID, especially since we've realized how overworked our care providers are today. So those are two areas I'm particularly exciting, and I do believe those two will bring a lot of value to Asia as well.
So decentralizing resources and also improving workflow, and how the different stakeholders even in delivery operate. All right, thank you so much, Carlos. And now I'll go on to my second question, which is I think we all know healthcare is actually quite known to be quite difficult to tackle for scale. Especially in Asia, that we all have different level of social economy and technological advancement. So the question then is how do innovation tackle these challenges? What are the challenges that innovation needs to overcome for digital health to advance and scale impact in the region? Maybe this time I'll start with the think tank, Chang.
Yeah, I think there's certainly great potential in improving access to digital technology. But I think actually a lot of time, I think it's actually a business model question. So how can we get really the business return out of digital health solutions? So I think a lot of that actually now driven back to sort of more of the higher end market. So that sometimes when the solution providers are developing some of the innovative projects, they're focused on that. But I think really go back to pay attention, really think about vulnerable groups, what they need, what kind of channels can reach them, and study and some of the best example already here in the region in providing value to them, but also generating business for the provider. I think that's very important. As we see, there is certainly by nature, digital technology is to be able to reach out to more people with lower cost, hence can reduce the disparity. But there's also a very big risk in creating more divide, because in the end, there is still income divide in embracing technology. So I think that's also where now when we are talking to all the providers, we constantly reminding them to pay attention to the vulnerable groups and to leveraging your solution, really thinking about how to reach out to that last mile, and also encouraging them to innovate in business model that driving sustainable resources into that sector.
I think that's a very interesting point. Given that in digital health, I think often even healthcare as a whole, often when we look at the region, we tend to see it as more of a out-of-pocket rather than a reimbursement-based market for a lot of solutions in mainstream healthcare. And then of course now digital health, right, no precedence. So then how do you actually address the divide consciously? Have you seen any specific ways in which it's particularly useful in terms of a business model to address it?
Yes, I think that's another sort of one of the very interesting example we see that happen in China. It's really a business model innovation that I think have great potential in ASEAN. It's the mutual aid model in China that's driven by 3 platforms, Shuidi, Qingsong, and both backed by Tencent, and Ali Finance, they have their major platform. So it's entirely by design, reducing the cost of health financing and also reaching out to people. So largely actually target third, fourth, fifth tier city and villages people, creating like very, very low entry barrier in access to additional healthcare protection, serving as actually a very nice layer of additional coverage beyond the basic medical insurance. And that actually became one of the core business of such fintech platforms in China. Now they're integrating more health services into it. And then certainly the other business model related to extending that into sort of insurance platform that are providing additional financial products and solutions to people. So I think that's very, very interesting. We see the advantage of leveraging digital platform to reach out to an untapped population. And I think the other example, again, I want to go back to possible health. It's really, when I think thinking about the long term, when some digital solution creating true value to a healthcare system, I think there will be business model to it. Just need to be more patient and be more integrated with the entire system. I think possible health in Nepal, they did reach that scale, and to be able to manage to really get a scalable, sustainable model, but really focus on the low resource population that require the most attention.
I think that's really an interesting point to see how that evolve. Whether that is we've seen some models that's by peer risk pooling, to like whether it's about then roping in the payers from government to insurers, even in markets or communities that are typically quite poorly reached by these traditional stakeholders. Then now I'll go on to Anil. Obviously, you see the whole region. There's a lot of differences in each market that you play. How do you actually scale innovation in these markets?
Scale innovation in this market?
Scale innovation in Asia. Like, how do you actually unlock digital innovation given the differences in the markets?
Right. Yeah. Just going back a wee bit to Chang's comments. Like I was reflecting on a couple of things as he was speaking. One was when we think about access, we think about access purely from a physicality of healthcare delivery, but there's other elements to access, which are including affordability and ability to potentially even affordability can be solved through an aggregated model, like what you're saying, pooled resources coming together. And we've seen that in real time happening in most of our Asian communities is health is a central subject, and many a times the families come together and everything happens to make sure that we take care of each other's health. Okay, and there's a community sense of wanting to ensure health is taken care of. And then there are responsibilities from the state, and then there are responsibilities from a payer, or there could be responsibilities of private insurance and banking or fintech companies who could potentially cover for the financing requirement. And there could be some innovative ways to solve for that. And Pfizer is extraordinarily passionate and focused on solving for that challenge. Okay, and if I reflect truly on the challenge which is there in Asia, we think about Asia with a broad brush. Okay, and we have Singapore, which is very evolved, to potentially some lower middle income countries, which large population in Asia. Okay, and large population countries like India and China, which are distinctly different markets. Okay, so Asia is got a mix of, you can't put a broad brush on it. And when I think about innovation from a technology perspective, I think there are 2 or 3 things which are critical for us to really focus on. One is infrastructure. Okay, it varies from country to country. Capability to manage that infrastructure varies from country to country. So we'll have to really think about it from that angle. But I'm more positive, optimistic of what Asia can really do, given the fact that I think we're probably leapfrogging on some technologies. When we've seen that in mobile industry and mobile technology. So I don't see any reason why, from a digital innovation perspective, though we have disparity in country to country, we potentially will leapfrog in our region too. Okay, 2, when I really look at technology uptakes in across the world, Asia seems to be on the front end on most of the areas. Let it be faster adoption to technology, let it be faster uptake of social media, the access to technology in rural fronts, in even lower middle income countries using mobiles. Okay, potentially 5G potentially will be fastest in Asia as against in US or Europe, right? So we seem to have an ability to unlock it from our leapfrogging capability which exists in Asia, but we'll have to understand that there's disparity. Two, there is disparity between haves and have-nots, like what I think Chang was talking about, right? And there are people who have access to even technology, okay? And there's a big segment of our population in Asia which is still potentially in rural Asia, okay, which doesn't have access even to technology. So even if you have digital solutions, okay, do we have infrastructure? Do we have access to technology to be able to bring these digital solutions into the play the way they're meant to come into the play? And then in my mind, I think the third would be really on regulatory environment. We think about solving for some of this healthcare solutions through digital technology uptake, but healthcare is also a highly regulated environment. Okay, so I think whoever is wanting to look for solving for the healthcare transformation using digital or scaling up innovation, as you called it, Hui Fong, my take is that those stakeholders will have to really work closely with the governments to shape the regulatory environment for the future. Yeah. So those are my broad three takes. Yeah. I'm sorry, a long-winded answer.
So to summarize, basically, that differences in infrastructure and capabilities to try to level that up with introducing tech to actually leapfrog some of the systems that were non-existent. And two, to look at how do we address the disparity issues with also looking at innovative financial models, payment models for access combined with technology. And three, engaging regulators and stakeholders as it's a very diverse environment, and to try to shape that up early when we come to health innovation. Very nicely said, very comprehensive answer. Now, I would like to go to Carlos to see what else you would like to add, looking at your portfolio companies. They are actually operating in different markets. How do you think they overcome challenges for their digital health solutions to take off in the region?
Yeah, so to build on the points built by Chang and Anil, I do think there is a big piece on the business model, on whether you can make it affordable, especially for Asia. I think it's very easy for startups to build a product that, you know, may be a medical grade solution, but sounds great to have, but it may not be top of mind for some of the healthcare providers out here. And due to the cost barrier, then it hampers your growth capability in Asia. The second thing that I want to bring upon is also that we talk about the tail end, but Asia, the one thing that has going for us as a positive note is that we have a very, very large and fast growing middle class population. And the truth is, as that grows, the expectation also improves. So, you know, I earn more, therefore I want to have better care to be provided to my family and myself. So care providers will also start to adjust in order to meet that demand as well. So as an investor, we are monitoring both aspects. One, the demand side, expectations changing, and two, of course, being mindful, of course, of the economics of Asian countries. But the truth is, for most of our portfolio companies, the aspiration is to start out here, prove out the business model. If you can survive in the cheaper environment, for sure you can go to the West. So that's what we like to see out here from Asian homegrown portfolio companies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, like some time ago, I always hear people say this phrase about reverse innovation. In the past, Asia used to like borrow from the West and the more developed markets in health. And how do we look at now innovating in a more resource-constrained environment and really bring that innovation to scale? And I think Carlos touched on a very important point of looking at knowing which segment of the market you want to target to capture that increase in terms of demand and expectations in order to leverage on that for your business model. Okay, thanks. I think that's very useful. All different perspectives. It's a very rich take on that question. I think now I'll move on to really looking at ecosystem partnerships. My first question on ecosystem partnerships is really now with the rise of digital health, we see a lot more new players coming in. Some of you have already mentioned that, like Alibaba, like Google. These are non-traditional like healthcare industry players. And with how do you see that model of collaboration evolve with the traditional healthcare players? Are there common partnership models that you would like to highlight? And for this question, maybe I'll focus a little bit more on what Chang and Anil see. I'll start with Chang.
Sure. Yeah, we have been following the players in healthcare, especially to the health system. It really has been rapidly updating. Like even now, besides what you said, the digital player, big platform player, but also like some telcos are running into this, and also like insurance companies, especially in China, everyone is getting to healthcare right now, right? So it's very, very interesting and dynamic. I think there are a few things. One is there's certainly needs of translation. Sometimes I think maybe the digital health players, their business model can be that translator. That can be a potential business model for them among the bigger different industry players. So we see a lot of them actually now playing as like TPA, third-party administrators for insurer. In the same time, linking and translating the health providers and pharma industry with them, forming those collaboration. And then, but I think for us, we're still looking for like more long-term. I think the real partnership lie on the common interest. For instance, we're now talking a lot between pharma and insurance company, which we realize just based on insurance product, it's almost impossible to reach alignment because by nature, they are against each other. Pharma want more reimbursement and insurer want to control the cost. So you need to step back, look at what's the common interest you have, right? One is potentially we can work together with the government to enable the healthcare system transformation for that region. That can be an example. Another one is looking at the population that you care about and building all the solutions, services, and data infrastructure for that population. Then both of you can benefit. So I think a lot of time might be needing to sort of looking for that common interest and looking for the population that you care about.
So usually you see the partnership coming together, mainly unlocking new value, particularly from government payers and new population that otherwise traditionally couldn't afford these services. Right.
Yeah, and certainly I think also Anil just rightly point out, I think government regulation is always extremely important for digital health sector. I think now, especially this is a critical year in China for digital health regulations. I think through COVID, there's some major breakthrough. Actually, Access Health, I think in the back end have been pushing some, but I think same opportunity we see in many other countries.
All right, thanks, Chang. A lot of food for thought there. And I think now I'll go to Anil. I'm sure Pfizer has a lot of such collaborations and examples with like various different stakeholders, given the extensiveness in which you operate in that market. So what, maybe you can also share with us a few unconventional partnership models that you have seen work.
Yeah, I'm like Carlos touched on this. I think I talked about it in my earlier comments saying that if we have to really transform, I think aggregated solutions have to happen. I don't think transformation is going to happen because a hospital transforms the way delivery happens, or a diagnostic company transforms, or healthcare financing gets transformed, or healthcare delivery mechanism gets transformed, or pharma companies transform the way they operate. I think they all have to come together. So I think creating an ecosystem where there's an opportunity for aggregated solutions to come to play, I think is very important. Okay, I think Carlos touched on this. That when you look at it from a conventional point of view, there might be counterproductive purposes. Okay, and when you take it back and you say, okay, I want to manage patient outcomes better, and I want to ensure healthcare equity exists in the world, and people have access to healthcare, and we need to solve for this. Then we find common solutions. Okay, so some unconventional partners can also come together to make that work. So Pfizer has been very active to want to ensure that we create these ecosystems wherever we operate. So people have an opportunity to really come together and have those conversations. I'll talk about that separately. But coming to your question, not necessarily only Pfizer, I think many pharma companies are beginning to realize that partnerships with seemingly unconventional. They're not completely unconventional. Sometimes we partner with the healthcare platforms. Okay, those are not completely unconventional because it's in the healthcare space. This is a digital platform which provides for telehealth or telemedicine or teleconsultation or teleeducation, etc., or a virtual way of making that come through. But those partnerships are true for many of the pharma companies, and Pfizer has done several of them. But a couple of them which I'd like to call out would be in Asia. We have tied up with a company in Indonesia called Halodoc, okay, which has more capability than just being a telemedicine company. Okay, and they can actually do patient management. And we have come out with an aggregated solution of right from educating patients to enrollment of patients to the right specialists, getting the specialists to find the most appropriate therapeutical option for that patient, to helping that patient to stay on the therapy in terms of adherence, and also financing, and also diagnostics, and also telemedicine delivery, right? So, and to bring that all together, we had to work not just with one partner, but we had to work with 3 or 4 partners. And to Chang's point, I think there's a fair amount of effort which goes into educating, okay, because somebody who understands this part of the world doesn't understand the other part of the world. But I think creating an ecosystem where there's an opportunity for people to come together and have these meaningful solutions is very, very good. I've seen, apart from Pfizer, many other multinational companies tying up with the wearables. You know, so we got into an alliance with BMS, and Pfizer got into an alliance with Fitbit, okay, to see what kind of data can really be generated, which could be useful even to an healthcare practitioner, a doctor who's treating a patient, to have access to the patient information so they can make more appropriate diagnosis or more appropriate therapeutical options for those patients. So that there's a lot which we can do in this world of unconventional partnerships. Even insurance, which Chang was talking about. Okay, we have actually started dialoguing with several insurance companies on really having an outcome-based understanding of how to drive a patient to the most appropriate therapy, because that's exactly what an insurance company wants to ensure that the population customers who are part of that insurance has a healthy, productive life. Okay, so it's in their best interest too. So you know, so there are ways to make these unconventional partnerships work.
So with every partnership, every party needs to bring something to the table, right? So what do you think is the critical proposition to make it work? Do you think it's really about growing top line for everyone?
I think a broader purpose, which is more driven purpose, I think helps partners come to the table a lot more easier than a simple financial purpose.
All right.
So I've rarely seen, because when you get into a conversation which is a purely financial purpose, then it becomes very transactional. And then it ends up being a negotiation spectrum. Okay, but if you, to what Chang was saying, if we can find common purposes of broadly what we want to drive, you know, a stakeholder who's providing a particular value, if that part of the industry, if they can define exactly what is their broader purpose which they're trying to drive, it becomes easier for them to collab. For instance, a payer is driving public health. Okay, and that's the broader purpose of a payer, is to manage public health and manage public health to ensure productive workforce. Okay, or reduce healthcare cost or healthcare burdens in the country. And if we define those broader purposes, then there could be other people who can partner with the payer in figuring out how those common purposes can be well served. You know? But if you make it purely a financial objective, I've rarely seen them really working out.
That's a very interesting point, and that's a very good lead in to my next question, which is directed at Carlos. given that investors need financial returns. So, like, how do you look at this? Like, how do you look at evaluating digital health opportunities and operating in this kind of a context where like partnerships are constantly shaped on like bring a broader purpose than financial?
And Hui Hong, before Carlos responds, I don't want it to be mistaken that I'm not saying that we should not be looking at financial viability of projects and options, okay, when people come together, but that should not be the primary goal. And there's a tremendous opportunity to unlock financially viable options through these partnerships through. Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, I think Anil teed me up quite nicely down there. I think the first thing we'll look at as an investor is definitely the problem statement that they're trying to solve. What are they trying to tackle? And is that important enough for us to care globally? And if it is, then we'll look into the sub-segments of that on how the solution is being provided. Does it require complex technology? If it doesn't, then great. If it does, then what's the IP behind it? And ultimately, when we assess an investment opportunity from an investor standpoint, will be based on the premise on how good the team is. We back teams. And secondly, how good is the solution that they're trying to create for the problem statement that I mentioned earlier. And because we're playing in the healthcare space, the last thing that we look at as well is potentially regulation angle. That's a very big part for us. And, you know, like Anil mentioned earlier, healthcare is highly regulated space. So we want to ensure that the companies that we invest in are in compliance with that. And also, of course, because that builds a defensibility angle as well as an investor. So different vectors, and to Anil's point, returns are very important, but in the healthcare space, because of the nature of healthcare, there's certain elements that will care about as well.
All right. So really looking at problem statement, basically then the size of the problem, then the team, and looking at solutions and possibly tech and regulatory coming in to supplement in terms of defensibility in the longer term. So I'll slant this question a little bit for Anil, given that you work with also a lot of startups and you alluded to that earlier in partnerships and collaborations. So many startups in the universe. So how do you actually decide which ones to work on? How do you evaluate those opportunities?
Yeah, so I like innovation, as you know, as a subject has got there are two things there. I think one is purely letting yourself free and creative and let ideas flow. Okay, so we do have some mechanisms to ensure that there's a lot of energy which is getting created with startups, provide an opportunity for incubation of those ideas. So that's one element which is I call divergent forces, to ensure that there's a lot of divergent energy which is going through trying out multiple things which have not been tried out in this world. Okay, but then you'll also have to converge at some stage. And when we look at convergence, I think to Carlos' point, there are a couple of things which I look for. One is this sustainable? Okay, from multiple dimensions. Is this sustainable for the patient? Okay, you always have to put the patient in the center of your thought process. And is it sustainable for the stakeholders who are coming together to bring the solution? And two, I look at is it scalable? Okay, so say for instance, something which you come out with a solution for a particular therapy or for a particular product or for a particular treatment class. Can you scale it across treatment classes? If it is only for a population, can you scale it across the population? If it is in a particular country, can you scale it across multiple countries? Okay, so those are the two dimensions which I would look at when I'm trying to converge onto the ideas and see which ones we really want to invest in. But what we have really done in the recent past is we created an healthcare innovation alliance between Alibaba Cloud and FinTech Association, which is in Singapore, and the National University of Singapore and Pfizer coming together to throw challenges, okay, in the healthcare space and say these are the key challenges which we're solving for. To Chang's point, how do we solve for access and affordability? in a very diverse set of population. Or to Carlos' point, there's an immense middle class growth and there's an ask for healthcare. So, either from a problem or an opportunity, we find challenges and we throw those challenges out, and we get startups to look at those challenges. It's not just startups. Interestingly, I found that a lot of large corporates which are interested in getting into healthcare space, they're also wanting to solve for those challenges. Okay, so we throw those challenges, we see if we can incubate some of them, we fund some of those projects ourselves, okay, and see if this alliance can drive 30 or 40 ideas in Asia. And maybe a couple of them will come to some level of financial feasibility for us to really invest behind and double down on, because we believe that it is sustainable and it is scalable.
So in the first instance, you'll be more experimenting based on whether it's a good fit with a problem statement or opportunity statement that you really identify with at Pfizer. I think that's a really good one. And for us to round off with the last question for all the panelists, before we end today's session, I think for this question, I'll start with Chang. I think given that a lot of the headlines we see for digital health has got to do with telemedicine these days, what really you think the next wave of digital health innovations that will gain traction, and are there specific technology that we should be looking out for?
I think I really need to talk to Anil offsite separately. I think for us, it's really, we are looking at fintech. So we have a whole program called FinTech for Health, looking across 6 Asian countries, looking at how they can leverage the technology and the platform. Most of them do have like amazing platform as well to provide solutions in healthcare. And I think especially in China, which is one of the key global driver in fintech innovation, we see the boundary between fintech and health tech become less and less obvious. So I think that's a very, very interesting direction.
So really fintech being a major driver for new value creation in digital health. Thank you so much, Chang. Carlos, anything to add, especially for as you are constantly scanning the horizon with tech, also there's some curiosity. Do you see any emerging trends that we should be looking out for in terms of solution types as well as technology?
Yeah, I think for me, one that I'm most excited about, or I'm very bullish about, is the digital therapeutics solutions, where you combine AI, hardware, sometimes wearables to not create new drugs per se, but really regulate the quantity of drugs that you provide to each individual person. So for example, that's one of our portfolio companies, Biopharmaceuticals. That's the direction that they're heading to at the moment. And yeah, we're very excited for what they're doing and the space that they're playing at. That's one that I'm quite bullish on at the moment.
So digital therapeutics and personalized medicine. So looking at like bring health to an individual level, n equals to 1, as well as looking at how digital augment what is conventionally approved, clinically approved therapeutics. Thanks so much, Carlos. And last but not the least, Anil, to round off today's discussion. So what do you see as the healthcare digital health solutions of great promise and as well as technology?
So I think there'll be twofold. One will be more transformative or breakthroughs in the way healthcare has been viewed in the past to what it'll be in the future. Let it be a diagnostic, let it be digital therapeutics, or let it be regulatory changes in the way aggregated solutions can be done between payers and fintech companies and everyone else involved. But there will also be, in my mind, I think, an immense opportunity for digital companies who don't understand even healthcare, but they have great functional capability. Let it be in machine learning, let it be in AI, let it be in data integration, let it be in the blockchain technology. Okay, they don't have to get into healthcare to be able to solve for healthcare problems, but that there's an immense opportunity for us to leverage and unlock the potential of health data which resides in the world. Okay, and I think a combination of these two is where I see some sweet spots. Okay, and then there'll be people who will be really looking at use of technology to solve for healthcare, and there'll be people who will be really bringing pure technology capability in digital. Okay, and that's where the sweet spots will be. You know? And I don't think people have to jump onto healthcare digital to be able to transform it. There are a few of those companies which will be only functionally building their capabilities, would also potentially transform some of the work which happens in healthcare.
I think that's really very interesting. Looking at first and foremost transforming the definition of what we think of when we look at healthcare, even as an industry and as in terms of the needs. I think even before COVID-19, probably we often think of more acute instances of health episodes as mainly healthcare, and now I'm hearing more of like well care and looking at also how health or functionalities of health are integrated in our daily applications that we use and daily living. And then the second, which is related to really your second point of then applying the cross disciplinary capabilities using health data to really unlock new use cases, new value creation for consumers, as well as I imagine at the systems level, of course, with data. Thank you so much. That actually very nicely sums up today's discussion. Looking at the three of you coming from different sides of view, from advisory group to biopharma to CVC, from a payer perspective, together seeing that there is broader purpose in using digital health to really unlock access in terms of not just physical access, of course that's still a salient point, as well as financial access and information access in this region. And with that, there's this belief that the new solutions that we'll have coming together, bring together this tri-party of collaborators will really unlock the way that health can then sustain the growth of the population's needs in the near future. Thank you so much for all three of you. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Carlos and Chang, for your time and the wonderful insights that you have shared today.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.